Full disclosure, everyone, like many of you, are at home and you may have little ones running around. I have a 13-year-old and a 8-year-old. Only the 13-year-old is mine, but the 18-year-old I'm babysitting, standing outside of my office. They're playing some type of karate game. So I have told them to be quiet, but they did not listen. So I apologize in advance if you hear a very loud, hi-ya, karate, whatever. I don't know, but they're pretty loud outside my door. But anywho, so we're going to talk about supply diversity and inclusion. And so first, let me just thank Carmen and the team for allowing me this opportunity to speak to everyone. I'm very excited, and I love talking about what it is that I do and helping entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs of color, be able to better understand this space. So we're going to go ahead on. So history of supply diversity. So this is just like supply diversity has a much longer history than this, but this is kind of where it started in 1958 with the Small Business Act was established by the Small Business Administration. And so that was kind of the catalyst where the government started taking a look at the importance of giving opportunities or leveling the playing fields, or just trying to provide some type of equity within the business community. So this is where it all started, where the government started looking at small businesses and realizing that small businesses contribute a significant amount to the overall U.S. economy. And so, but they have a hard time getting into the spaces, and having to compete with large businesses is it's hard for smaller businesses. So the government got involved and they started doing what they do, and approving legislature and putting other rules and practices in place to kind of help drive these initiatives. And so, as you can see, in 1969, President Nixon, he signed an executive order that created the Minority Business Development Agency. And that agency is still around. It's an organization, again, dedicated to helping small businesses understand typically the government landscape. As we talk a little bit more, I'll talk to you guys about kind of bringing the supplier diversity aspect of it. But much of this started in the government space with regards to government contracts and the money that the federal agencies spend. And so the Minority Business Development Agency, again, they're still around. There are several types of organizations that exist, and they are designed to help build the capacity of these small and diverse businesses. And when I say build the capacity, I mean kind of teach them the ropes, explain to them, introduce things to them that they may not have known that would help make their business successful. So mentorship programs, set-asides. A set-aside is when the government says we're going to set aside a certain amount of work for a certain diversity group. So the government may say, we're going to set aside this particular work for women-owned businesses. And so this is like I said, back in 1958 is really when the conversation started to really be had about how the government is going to create these opportunities for small and diverse businesses. And so, like I said, it started primarily within the government space, and then it started to move into the commercial space. And the 1972 is when the National Minority Supplier Development Council was founded, and NMSDC for short. And the NMSDC, while they do a lot of work helping companies better understand and navigate the government space, but they do a lot of work in supplier diversity. So the difference between supply diversity and kind of small business activities in the federal government. So it's just who your clients are. So in the government, they have the small business liaison officer, and that person, or they have a small business utilization office, and that the goal of that office and or person is to buy services, identify small and diverse businesses to buy goods and services from in support of what the government has going on. The same thing on supply diversity. There are supply diversity managers. The work is very, very similar, except the biggest difference is that on the government side of the house, the businesses have to be small. So you can be small and diverse, but small is very important to the government, and the government determines small on based on these things called NAAQS codes, and so they are the North American Industry Acquisition Codes, and it's so much information, so I don't want to get too deep in it in the weeds and where it the information is not valuable, but the takeaway is that when dealing with the government and trying to win contracts with the government and work with the government, it's very important to pay attention to the your own NAAQS codes, and that aligns with the your service offering. So if you are a IT company or professional services company, there is a NAAQS code specifically dedicated to the type of work that you do and you offer, and then there are some rules associated with that to determine like your size of your company and things of that nature, and that will also determine how you're able to engage and what you qualify for with regards to the government agencies. On the supplier diversity side, which is the focus is on corporate partners, it's very different. It's just, we don't care what size you are on the corporate side. We just want to make sure that your business is at least 51% owned and operated by a diverse person. And how the government defines diverse and how the corporations define diverse is a little different, but we're going to dig into that a little bit on other slides. But I just want to make sure with regards to the history of supplier diversity, it kind of started, like I mentioned, as a federal mandate. The government got involved and said, these are some things that you kind of have to do. And then it kind of transitioned to being the right thing to do. So companies, the government, everybody's like, supplier diversity, engaging with small businesses, it's the right thing to do. It's feel good. It's like philanthropy work. And then it kind of turned into a corporate, or I guess manifests itself into like corporate responsibility. So then that's when it kind of shifted more to philanthropy, like then you do this type of work. You help out the minority groups or the women, people of color, this is how you give back to the communities in which we do business in. And then today, and I think more and more, and as this timeline goes on, people are starting to realize that supply diversity, just like any other types of diversity initiatives, they are business imperatives and they are critical to the overall sustainability of an organization. Like it's becoming, we all live in this world, it's becoming more and more difficult for companies who, kind of maintain certain spaces like, white spaces, or where they put up barriers for, Black people or other people of color and or women to kind of get into, to get access to just things that everybody should have access to. And so it's getting really, really hard for businesses to be able to sustain the status quo with leaving behind, people of color. We saw that when after George Floyd's murder, it was a domino effect of all of these large companies that were like, we stand against racism. Oh, we stand against racism, because they know that this is one of those times where if they don't speak up, that there will be some significant blowback on the company. So I'm gonna go to the next slide. So this is just like a kind of like a supply diversity and integrated approach. And so for me, I work for a large Fortune 500. All of you guys are probably very, very familiar with the company that I work for, and it's Verizon. So I'll just go ahead and let you guys know who I work for. But I've worked for many large companies in the same capacity, and most of all of the companies that I've worked for and moving forward, they are looking at supply diversity as like an integrated approach. It's a part of the global diversity and inclusion plan. And so when you're thinking about diversity and inclusion, you're focusing on uniqueness, and then equity, belonging, and authenticity. And so, and how this kind of applies to supplier diversity is that these are communities that you just cannot, you have to pay attention to. And it's getting to a point where even the people within companies, they are expecting the companies that they work for to engage with diverse suppliers, because they know that when a company like Verizon or, any large company that you can think of, Apple, Google, what have you, when they engage with diverse suppliers, there is something called a economic impact. And there's a ton of gains that happen in various communities. So if a company like Verizon spends $1 million with a Black-owned business, chances are that Black-owned business is going to buy Black, going to spend in their own community, going to hire people from their community, going to open up an office or some type of office space or something within their own communities, and that is the economic impact. And so in the companies now, people are, the employees, the clients, everybody is asking these questions. I do a lot of work with proposal responses, and many proposals that I get, well, all of the ones that come to me, because that's why they come to me, but more and more they're asking, so tell us about how you're supporting your supply diversity efforts. What are you doing? How is your company managing this? And then also requiring my company to, like, if we want to do business with another company like Apple, for certain, Apple will say, hey, you want to do business with us? That's great. You need to, a portion of the business that you do first, you need to subcontract that to a small and or diverse business. So it is becoming very, very important. And companies, they understand the impact, and they know that, people are expecting this of them. One thing that you'll hear all the time, and anytime you are listening to somebody speak about supply diversity, they'll talk about why supply diversity is important. And one, maintaining an inclusive supply chain, it breeds innovation. There are so many, just like you guys on the call, you guys have all these amazing and creative ideas. You don't have a lot of bureaucracy. They're innovative. They're things that, a company like Verizon probably hasn't even thought of and probably never will. And so that's why it has been decided or determined or proven that sustainability comes from innovation. Like, in order for the company to grow and mature and stay in the loop, we need thought leaders. We need to partner with thought leaders within the business. Within the ecosystem. And so then, of course, product, services, and experiences for a diverse customer base. So companies like mine, we want to become the provider of choice. And so this is kind of where we look at where we're like, okay, we have a diverse customer base, and people in the community, they want to make sure that the company that they're spending their money with, the companies that they're, if they are not entrepreneurs and they want to work for companies like ours, like, they want to make sure that we are doing things that align with their morals, and that we are supporting communities we're supporting the kind of communities that we're trying to sell our stuff to. So if we want to go into certain neighborhoods and sell, cell phone service, that community is holding companies like mine accountable, saying, okay, you're in here, but tell us what you're doing with regards to working with Black-owned entrepreneurs or what have you, because we know that supports our community. And then again, I mentioned the economic inclusion piece. We know that when we do this, we drive change within the various organizations in which that we all live and serve in. So this is like top of mind why people do the things that they do. With regards to supply diversity, it makes very good business sense to do it, and a company couldn't survive if it didn't. So I mentioned earlier before diverse suppliers and how they're defined. And so they're I have experience with both the federal and the supplier diversity world. In a previous role, I was a small business liaison officer. So I did all the clients, and all the work that I did was dedicated to the federal space. The last few years, I've worked primarily in supplier diversity. So I do have industry knowledge of both. And so with regards to diverse suppliers and how they're defined, my company and many other companies, especially the large companies, define diverse suppliers by people of color, women, veteran, service disabled, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a sec, and disability owned. And so, as you can see, people of color, it's basically ethnic minorities. A lot of the government agencies, well, all of the government agencies, they do not formally recognize the LGBT community, but there are several government agencies that have a executed memorandum of understanding with the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, to where they will give consideration to an LGBT certified business. And so within the commercial space, I mentioned certification. Diverse suppliers are certified through third-party organizations and or government agencies. So on the federal side, there is a tool called sam.gov. You go in, you register your business. You'll see some of those things around NAICS codes and other things that I was talking about earlier. But also through the Small Business Administration, you can self-certify as a woman-owned business, as a small business. You as a veteran-owned business, the process is not very it's not very detailed. You provide some information, and the government trusts that you say that you are who you say you are, and then you will be classified as that entity, and you can start looking at opportunities that you want to bid on based on your diversity classification. There are two government classifications that they are not self-certifying, and that is 8A and HubZone. And so 8A is it's a huge application. Like it's a pretty significant investment, but from my understanding and working with entrepreneurs, it has great returns. You're a part of the 8A program for 8 years, and then you graduate out. Once you graduate out, you can't get back in because you've probably grown so much anyway that you wouldn't qualify for the 8A. But 8A program focuses on small businesses and primarily minority-owned businesses. And so there are a lot of components to the 8A program. So if you're interested, I would definitely go to the Small Business Administration website and just kind of and search on 8A, and you'll see kind of what the qualifications is and if it makes sense for your business and the type of work that you're trying to do. And if you have a desire to work with the federal government, then that's a really good option too. HubZone is one of my favorites, and that is a HubZone certification is one that you can't self-certify. It's an application process. And basically a HubZone business means that your business is headquartered in a underutilized area. So if it's a rural area where businesses are not really popping and thriving, that may be considered a hub zone. If it's in maybe a less desirable area of town, that may be considered a hub zone. And if you open up a business in that area and you establish that as your headquarters, you can qualify to be a hub zone. Hub zone is one of those areas that people sometimes get into it, qualify initially, but when they start growing, they kind of no longer qualify for it, because the one thing about the hub zone is that your business has to stay in the hub zone. And I think it's a pretty significant amount of your employees have to also live in that same hub zone. And normally if you have an IT company, or we've seen that if you have an IT company and you start making all this money and you start, your revenues are getting bigger and bigger, people move out of the community. And so the company sometimes no longer becomes or they're able to claim the hub zone status. But hub zone status in the government, it's a really hard, the government has a hard time finding hub zone companies, because like I said, they may start as hub zone, but then once the more successful they come, people they move out of rural towns, they move into, what we call better, what they deem as better, perceive as better communities. And so they usually lose that. So I would consider that. On the commercial side, diverse suppliers, people of color, like I said, and the diversity categories that you have here. And I mentioned that the government does not recognize as an official category the LGBT community like in the commercial space. We do. And it stops at the T. And people ask me that all the time, why don't you say LGBTQ plus? So there are third-party certifying organizations, and there are organizations out there that certify that you are a person of color, that you are a woman, that you're a veteran. And there is also an organization that certifies that you are a part of the LGBT community. And specifically with the LGBT community, the organization that certifies is the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. And on another slide, you'll see these organizations that do the certifying in the commercial space. There's no way to really certify beyond the T. You can prove there are qualifiers in place that allows you to be able to certify that you are indeed lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. Marriage certificates is one. If you are transgender and you have gone through a transition process, that paperwork, that helps. If you are a same-sex couple and you adopt, that type of stuff, that type of paperwork or credentials will help. It can be used to determine your eligibility. And there are many others. So if anybody has any questions about that, I am going to be, I'll make myself available to kind of go into more details. But I just wanted to make sure I said that we don't go past the T, because it's just hard to certify anything beyond that. So we talked about the business case, and I'm just going to hit a couple of things and then I'm going to go on. But the main business case for supplier diversity is innovation. When we work with these companies that are out here doing amazing things, we really do, they do open our eyes and expose us to things that we have maybe had little exposure to before. And other companies, smaller companies they're nimble. They can do things that larger companies we just cannot do. And it's becoming a requirement. So like it says, increased government customer sales contracts and bid opportunities. The government, it's a mandate. It's still in the government. So when if you're going after a government, like if there's a large company going after a government contract, if that contract is over, I think $650,000 or $750,000, the government requires you to submit what it's called a subcontracting plan. And in that plan, you have to detail to what percentage who the suppliers are, the small businesses you're going to use, that you're going to subcontract a portion of this work to what percentage and what the dollar amount is and what they're going to do. Lots of government agencies have 20% utilization, 30%. The DoD, the defense agencies, theirs typically tend to be very high. So they're like, hey, Verizon, Apple, whatever, if you're going to do work with us, you're going to have to 30% of the contract that we spend. So if we are giving you $1 billion contract, 30% of that $1 billion has to go to a small business. So the government mandates it. On the commercial side, the supplier diversity, there's not really a mandate, but there is a very, very high expectation. So if Verizon wants to do business with Google and sell Google like some cell phone services or something, Google is like, okay, we'll do business with you, but tell us about your supply diversity program. How are you going to supplement? Who are you going to subcontract to? Like, they're very similar. The language is very similar to the government and how the government puts forth mandates. And just, for companies, being an industry leader, political leverage and is very important, because, large companies like the Googles and all those people of the world, they like their external relationships and their external, like what they look like and what people think about them as a company matters. And this is a part of their story. So I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you've noticed lots of companies like Apple, Google, maybe I think even Verizon and AT&T. Many companies were during the pandemic, COVID, when all these small businesses, especially Black businesses, were shutting their doors or really struggling. All of these companies were like pledging all this money. AT&T said, $10 million. We're going to spend $10 million on working with African-American owned businesses. And Google was giving away grants. Facebook was giving away grants. Verizon was giving away grants to kind of help businesses, because in the Black community specifically, the New York Times reported that 41%, which kind of averages out to about 450,000 Black owned businesses closed their door permanently within the first 2 months of COVID, because they just could not sustain. So lots of these companies came out and they were handing out money, hand over fist. They might have took you through a few hoops to get through it, but they were giving money to companies, grants, to kind of help the small businesses. And they were looking at Black businesses specifically, especially after the murder of George Floyd, to support. So that's definitely something to look at when you are looking at selling your services to one of the commercial firms. So here are the supplier diversity organizations that I talked about that does the certifying. Not all of them certify, but if you're, I know with Verizon and many of other corporations that I work with, we do require that our suppliers be certified, and they have to be to count as a part of our diverse certification number, like our numbers that we report to our board and externally. We do work with some suppliers that are not certified, but when we find that they're not certified, we really try to get them to encourage them to be certified. And so the $1 Billion Roundtable, this is important, and I put that towards the end of the presentation. But it's the $1 Billion Roundtable consists of 27 companies that spend $1 billion every year with diverse businesses. And Verizon is one of those companies. And I have at my last slide, I'll show you all of the companies that spend that kind of money and and give you an idea of some of the types of services, goods and services that they purchase. The National Minority Supplier Development Council, that's a third party organization. That's the one that was on the timeline. They certify ethnic minority businesses. WeBank, Women's Business Enterprise National Council, they certify women. National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, I mentioned, disability and USHCC, and then the National Veteran Business Development Council. USHCC, they certify Hispanic owned businesses, and then the National Veterans, they certify veterans. And these are the ones that a lot of companies, they use. There are more organizations like this out there. So if you're not certified through one of these, I know a company like Verizon, if you have a certification through another organization that is reputable, then typically we will accept that certification. But these are kind of the major players in the game. And so a couple of things I wanted to point out here is lots of companies are starting to commit their C-level executives to supplier diversity. So it's a part of like their target. So if they don't, if they don't make their targets, it impacts their bonus. And then there's two things that I wanted upon regards to Verizon or the government. Ideally, everybody wants to get what we call is tier one spend. You want the government, you want a contract directly with Verizon, a contract directly with the government. And depending on your size and scope, that may be very, very difficult. And so we often, encourage people to consider tier two options. So that's the subcontracting option. So that's, that's Verizon initiating a contract with a company, maybe like Apple, and then Apple subcontracting it. It gives you an opportunity to gain a lot of experience with working in the commercial space, and same with the government, because to work with the government, you have to have past performance, and it's really hard to get past performance if nobody is going to give you an opportunity. So subcontracting is a very good way of getting past performance. And Verizon and many other companies, we put in our contract language. So like if we are working with Google and they want to sell us something, or Apple, they want to sell us phones, we say, hey, Apple, you can sell us all the phones you want, but you have to, but we're going to put some diverse supplier utilization goals in your contract, which means you have to subcontract out to this at a certain percentage. So more and more companies are holding people accountable and like kind of saying, hey, you need to subcontract. And one thing that that government agencies do, and the corporations, they have a lot of programs, supplier capacity building events. So supplier events where you can go in and meet the small business liaison officer, if it's government, supplier diversity people, if it's commercial, and you can learn about the companies, learn about the things that they meet, that they sell, or they buy, I should say. And then you can meet with like sourcing professionals. They're the ones who, like, they do all the buy-in of the services, and they help you, they kind of help you navigate that process. And so there's a lot of information, a lot of sessions. Verizon does quite a few, and many other organizations do as well. And these certifying organizations down here, that's one of the perks of being with them, because they create a lot of opportunities for small and diverse business to engage with large companies or mid-sized companies. They offer a lot of capacity building. They offer a lot of educational support, how you get loans, and just all types of things that will help you. It's a perk. It's a perk of membership. And then a lot of large companies also have diverse supplier mentorship programs. So if you're looking at, building your list of clients that you're going to go after, look at some of the things that they offer to help develop diverse suppliers, their capabilities, so that they can be better partners with the suppliers. And so I talked a little bit about the tier 1, tier 2 spend, and this is what I was talking about. So like a non-diverse, tier 1 is a non-diverse firm, non-diverse. So that would be like, Verizon is paying the diverse suppliers. We do that. And many other companies do it as well. That's tier 1. And then the tier 2 is Verizon pays a Google, and Google pays the non-diverse. That happens a lot too. So everybody wants the tier 1, and I get it. But a lot of times it's hard when you're just starting out, and it's kind of hard to get get those tier 1 spots. So the tier 2 is a great alternative to kind of get your foot wet and get your foot in the door and start building your past performance. Got some questions coming in, so that's why I'm seeming a little distracted. So I think this may be my last slide, but who's buying what? And so if you remember, I talked about the $1 billion roundtable. So these are the companies that are in the $1 billion roundtable. So as you can see, it's some really powerful, some big companies: Verizon, Walmart, AT&T, Apple is in there, Bank of America, CVS, Comcast, Microsoft, Toyota. You guys can read them yourselves. I'm sorry to do that. And these are just some of the services some of the things that I know that, popped up off the top of my head that companies buy. And I was just kind of thinking, I work for a systems integrator, which is Accenture. I was thinking about, I work for Sodexo, the types of things that they buy, Verizon, what they buy. And it was another company and Booz Allen Hamilton, the types of things that they buy. And so it just runs the gamut. A company needs lots of things. Now, granted, there are some things that a company may spend a whole lot of money on, and maybe they still need like health and wellness services, but they probably don't need like $20 billion worth of health and wellness services. So like a company like Verizon, it's a technology company. So, the bulk of the money that they spend is in like network and towers, to keep the cell phone towers up and running, innovative IT solutions, anything around security, because we want to make sure that the network is secure. We buy cell phones, we buy cases, we buy that kind of stuff, but we also buy food items. So we have cafeteria services or vending services or coffee services. We buy, toilet paper, we buy those types of things, construction services, because we build buildings, we have retail stores. And so in the retail stores, they have marketing, they have like the kiosks in there, anything that makes up a store, the blinds, the cleaning services, security, those types of things. So companies buy a ton of stuff. It just kind of depends per the company, like what they buy most of. So like for a company like Sodexo, which is a food services and facilities management company, they buy food. They buy, if you do carpentry or landscaping, that anything that would maintain a building, that falls under facilities management. So it's a matter of identifying the company that you want to work, that you think will be a good company and a good fit for your organization, and kind of seeing how they allocate their money. It's a lot easier to do on the government side, because every year the government posts like their budget. You know, they're like, this is what we're going to spend our money on. This is what we're going to buy. And if you look and you say, okay, I sell IT services, and the government is going to, and you know, this particular agency, like Department of Homeland Security, they're going to spend $50 billion in IT services, then this is probably an organization that I am going to target. And I would say if you're just starting out, I would target small, like, well, one, if I was going after the government business, I would look at some of the smaller government agencies, the ones like the, you know, like the Smithsonian, or ones that don't have, where everybody is not chasing them and the competition is a little light. But I would definitely look at their budgets and how they allocate their money and see if it's a good fit for me, and then start building my relationships with the small business liaison officer, going to they have these offices, they're called OSTABUs. I can't think of what that stands for, but it's like the Office of like Small Business Utilization, and starting to like understand how this agency works and kind of get my foot in the door and just kind of see, you know, how I can maybe do business in the future. It takes a long time sometimes to get into the government as well as the commercial space, like 18 months or more, because you got to start with the relationships. And then the same on the commercial side. I would target a few companies, and if they align well with what you offer, then I would, then that would be how I, you know, build my plan to kind of navigate and penetrate those companies. There's so much information, and I know I probably spoke in more details than I probably should have, but there's so much information, so many resources, so many ways that you can get business. Like in the government, they have these things called GSA schedules. And if you like get on a GSA schedule, and basically you have to like kind of apply to it, you have to demonstrate past performance in that area. And then the government will issue, you know, they'll say anybody who is a GSA schedule for IT services, which is like, you know, IT 70 GSA schedule, you know, these are the only people that can bid on these services. So the government does offer a lot of opportunities to engage with small and diverse businesses, but it takes a lot of research and a lot of work to get to a point where you're able to do it. But there's also a lot of help out there, and the government offers a lot of help so that you can do it. And the commercial side, they do as well, either through their own supplier diversity organizations, small business organizations, or through the third-party certifying organizations that I mentioned. So, all right, I do have a question that how did these big business identify the minority-owned businesses to support? Was there a grant process? Okay, so yes. So when the company, they identified, you had to apply. So I know Verizon, they did, they like during the COVID, when it was like really, you know, when we really first shut down, they would have these concerts every Thursday, these virtual concerts every Thursday. And they would talk about like these grants that they were offering. But yes, I know right now, I just got something right now from Facebook where they were offering, I think it was like $10,000 grants or something like that, $5,000 grants to small businesses. Someone just sent it to me maybe earlier this week. So you go, they are grants. You have to apply. You go to the websites, you look and see what's out there. There's another platform called Hello Alice. It really does focus on like small businesses, small entrepreneurs, or early in the entrepreneurial stage. So I would look at that. It helps with like developing tech, marketing, branding. And so it's a company that Verizon partners with. So that's why I'm somewhat familiar with it, but check it out, Hello Alice. But there are tons of opportunities. It's like trying to find a scholarship to college. You know, there are many of them out there, but you just kind of got to do the research and find them. And they don't always make them easy, which is why we have these certifying organizations or these types of events where people are talking about, you know, just giving you more information. And you just keep going to these conferences and these events, and you'll get, and you know, you'll start just filling up your toolkit with stuff. So yeah, I think that was my last slide. And so I'm a little nervous because I'm like, once I stop sharing this, I don't know what y'all gonna see, probably my crazy desktop. So, but I would, like to, yeah, my crazy desktop. So I'll just go back to this front slide. I would like to, if there are any questions, I'm real long-winded and I usually don't keep up with the time. So I need to if you have any questions, if I don't know if I'm overtime, I don't know what's going on. So y'all let me know.
We have some comments in the chat about the information you said being so informative, and they have learned a lot. Lindsay's question about, how these people identify folks, like how are folks finding them outside of just the different clearinghouses of information like the Supplier Diversity Councils, because a lot of people don't know about those organizations. It seems like you kind of have to be kind of baptized in the supplier diversity realm to know about the Supplier Diversity Councils and other places. So,
all right. So let me see if, so I know, all right, let me just, people can hear me?
Yeah, they can hear you and
they can hear me and see me. Okay, good. All right. So I know, guys, I'm sorry. It's a ton of information because it really is a lot of information to that kind of goes into this. So I am looking in some of the chats. So I'm gonna try to go through them. Sam.gov, yes, www.sam.gov. And so if you want to work for the government, you're gonna have to get to know that tool. And it's a free tool. You go in, you register, and you'll see all of the information that they ask you. I don't want to say it's completely easy or self-explanatory, but it's achievable. You can go in there and you can see everything, and you can definitely figure it out and manage it. But you can't work with the government without having an account in that tool. And I will say this is just a caveat. Like I mentioned earlier, the government allows you to self-certify. So the government says, hey, if you say you're a woman, I believe you're a woman. But if they find out that you are lying, then you will be disbarred from the government and you won't be able to ever do business with them ever again. So, and that tool, sam.gov, that's where you make all your declarations. That's where, everything you put in there, that's where you claim who you are. And if anything in there is not true and it comes to light that it's not, that's, they'll use the information that you put in sam.gov against you. It only if you're not being truthful. So, but yes, sam.gov. Yes, I'll share the presentation. I have to scrub it a little bit, but the majority of the information, yes, you'll have. SBA 8A program. I don't see. Yeah, perfect. So somebody put that out there. The SBA website is a wealth of information. It's a lot of content, and it's sometimes difficult to navigate. They have these organizations called the PTAC. They're like the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. They have them in wherever you live in your communities. They are very, very helpful and useful. They offer a lot of free services, a lot of free capacity building, a lot of free education resources to help you start and run a business. Opportunity around financing, loans, just all types of programs out there. Now, again, tons of information available does not mean the path is easy. It is a lot of work, and I know as entrepreneurs, you guys have probably seen that. So, and you get frustrated, but don't give up. There's a lot out there to get. I think working with like the NMSDC or the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce, which is now on here, they have a lot of local, a lot of chambers within in the communities in which we all live. I think Black businesses, they fare well with the chambers because they really do help you kind of navigate a lot of these processes on both the commercial and the government side. But the NMSDC, they certify all ethnic minorities, all people of color, I should say. And they also are a very, very good tool to kind of walk you through and help you and pair you and partner with you and just connect you to the resources that you need. So it's out there, but it's kind of hard. It is a hard process. So, stay the course. Do we know how these businesses were identified? I don't understand that question. How did the big business identify the minority-owned business to support? Okay, yes, grant questions that you had to apply. So you kind of had to know that they were offering the opportunities. And I will say, and it's hard, again, it's hard if you're not in this kind of world. But I will say this, if you think of like companies, like those companies that are supposed to be like socially responsible, super cool and innovative. So like the AT&Ts of the world, Google, Verizon, Apples, you name it, like those, those cool companies, they all have these types of things, Facebook, Instagram, like all those types of companies. And I will say this, Google is a really good company. Yeah. It's either Google or Apple. I would check both of them, but they're really, really good companies because one of those companies focus a lot on small businesses, and they don't require like a certification. Like they really focus on small businesses, and they offer a lot of free tools to help small businesses do something. So like there's this one company that I was working with, and they do like data, diversity and inclusion, data analytics and surveys and stuff like that. And their building was Google, who was like helping them or providing them some pro bono work to help build out their platform. So you kind of got to just get in there and identify some companies and that align with what it is that your business does and see what they're offering. And she said there's a clearinghouse that vet you. Yes. So if it's a third party certifying organization, they do vet you. So NMSDC, that's, the people of color, NGLCC, LGBT, the women owned one, all of the third party certifying organizations. This is separate from the government. They do have a vetting process, and that you submit an application. It is a fee associated to it, but it's a sliding scale depending on how big your organization is. It's cheaper, and then it gets, as you grow, it gets more expensive. But they want to make sure that you own and operate the company. So there's like, you got to give them your financial data, all of that type of stuff, your organizational structure, paperwork packet. And then they interview you because they want to make sure that you are who you say you are, and that that you understand this company. There is fraud. So there's been times where somebody will say they're a woman-owned business, but maybe their husband or their brother or somebody really runs the business. So they do the interview, and they will not talk to the male at all. In this case, they can add some value, but it's the woman that they're focused on, because they want to make sure that this woman is fully understands and operates this business. I'm sorry, I'm going fast because I'm trying to get through all these questions. Detailed notes. I'm sorry. I hope somebody got some detailed notes, but I will say this. I will make myself available. You guys can send me some emails. Carmen, I'm sure, is going to pass out my information, and I'm happy to answer any questions that I can, and just kind of help you in any way that I can. Somebody's like, sweet, thanks. I didn't, my notes were confusing. I know, that's how I write. I'm confusing. So disabled vet, what about, I made declarations, what about if you're a disabled vet? Yes, there are, disabled vet is one of those diversity categories that both the government and the commercial sector recognizes. Lots of programs for disabled vets. Can you self-declare? Yes, you can self-declare through the government. And there's organizations in the on the commercial side that you can align yourself with, where you can certify through them as well. And then they also help you with capacity building, educational sessions. So I mean, I'm a proponent of working with the certifying organizations because they offer so much more than certifications, but if you get out of them what you put into them. And one of the biggest things that I think people get out of these organizations, being a part of the certifying organizations, is not just being like, positioned to connect with a company like Verizon or Apple or whatever. It's being able to meet other businesses, so doing some of that B2B with, companies that are also certified. And I would like to say all of the $1 billion Roundtable companies, every last one of them are corporate members of all of those third-party certifying organizations that I mentioned. So each one of those third-party certifying organizations have corporate members, and they have hundreds of corporate members. So when they have conferences, all types, their various events, their their corporate members typically attend, like they're there. They come to the conferences, they do bag lunch sessions, they do capacity building. That's who they use to help build the capacity of the supplier. So like I do these types of have these types of conversations all the time through either one of those organizations, through the chamber, the various chambers that I work with. So it's a lot. So I would look at those organizations just to see kind of what they do. A lot of times a company like Verizon, we do it all the time through those third-party certifying organizations. We sponsor businesses to go through like these in-depth entrepreneurial trainings through like this Kellogg, Tuck, Kellogg School of Business, or Kellogg Business School, Tuck School of Business, Washington State, week-long entrepreneurial sessions where we pay for it. You just got to get there. And once you get there, the food and lodging is already there. This is before COVID. Now everything is virtual, but they have those types of, intensive entrepreneurial trainings, and and they're all by sponsors. So the way you get in is through a sponsor. Somebody has to pay for you to get in. And lots of companies like myself, IBM, they're like the main sponsor of many of those types of programs. So like any large company that you could think of, chances are they probably belong to one of these certifying organizations. And a good rule of thumb to kind of see if somebody has a supply diversity program, the government agencies, they do. So you don't have to worry about that. It's just a matter of what government agency works best for you. But the supply diversity, like I would Google, like if you're thinking about, hey, I wonder if Apple has a supply diversity program, I want to do business with them. I would Google Apple supply diversity, and their supply diversity website will come up. There's probably some emails, some information, how to do business with them, what they look for and all of that stuff. So I think I'm probably over my time.
Because you was bringing good information to the people. And so it's very important. Because I know Stephanie. Stephanie is real good people. She is a disabled veteran, and she works really hard on with people who are re-entering society from incarceration. So I'm glad that you were able that she was able to get her questions in and get those answered, because she really does work hard in the community. So I thank you, Tiffany. Thank you so much. You were awesome. Aggie Pride, for those of you.
You better believe it. If any Aggies on the board, you better believe it.
You love.
Yeah, my auntie sweat.
Come on through. Please give Tiffany a virtual round of applause. We will make her slides and contact information available to you in your follow-up emails, as well as ask you for feedback about the sessions that you've seen and any information you would like to share with us. Next up is the sessions. So if you go, if you look to the side of your screen, it should be saying now. Sessions, Dorothy and Ms. Delpha are waiting for you in those session areas to either learn about bank financing or learn about how to create a dope website in only 45 minutes. All right. So thank you all. We'll see y'all in the sessions, and get busy in the chat and let us know what you're thinking. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.